Call for Love in the Center of the Apocalypse is an apocalyptic mecha action game where the world is about to be destroyed without dating. However, Akira Sagazawa believes that the female protagonists have big personality problems, and dating them is not as good as destroying the world. So, when a normal player acts as the lowly licking dog of the female lead according to the game's requirements, he goes the other way. Directly treat the female protagonist as a tool for browsing experience and opening maps, throw them away as soon as you use them, without any attachment. The end of the world is coming, and demons are invading. Do you still have the leisure to talk about love? Ace drivers don't need women. Full of hatred. It's okay, this is a necessary sacrifice. After successfully preventing the destruction of the gods, preserving the spark for the revival of civilization, and becoming the savior, Akira Sagazawa succeeded. He unexpectedly travels into the post-game conversation, facing the resurgence of gods and demons, as well as the hatred-filled female protagonist who wants to divide himself into 5 equal parts. Everyone, I know you're in a hurry, but don't worry yet. The high gods fooled the world, but one day they were horrified to discover that God would also die. Xiangzi Xiu. I'm hungry, which god did I eat today? Keywords of the novel. After reaching the full hatred level of the female protagonist, I traveled through no pop-ups. After reaching the full hatred level of the female protagonist, I traveled through the download of the complete TXT series. After reaching the full hatred level of the female protagonist, I traveled through the latest chapters to read. Chapter 1. After filling the hate level. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 1. After filling the hate level, even if I don't lick the dog, I can still pass the level. Looking at the list of producers scrolling on the screen, Xiang Zixio stretched lazily and took a sip of happy water. Call for Love in the Center of the Apocalypse is a mecha action game with a love element and an apocalyptic background. According to the setting, in the near future, nameless black mist will descend upon Japan, demons will invade and mysteriously revive, and modern civilization will become independent urban islands. People who can fight against demons are called Imperial Knife Masters. They use spirit swords to subdue demons and rely on a mech called Spirit Knife Armor to fight against the emerging demon gods in the Black Mist. In the game, as a sword-wielding player, the main focus is not on chopping. Most of the time is spent dating the female protagonist known as the Great Ming God, to avoid emotional instability and the destruction of the human city under their protection. Yes, even though the game's combat system is great, players insist on dating the female lead. And it also deeply binds with the female lead. If you don't boost your favorability, the overall difficulty will increase by more than 1 level. If the hostess sets it up well and the plot is excellent, then it's not impossible to talk about it. But according to the setting, because the female protagonist has power comparable to that of the gods, their mental state is very problematic. Arrogant and domineering, sickly and spoiled, doting on and controlling the 5 female leads, each twisted and twisted, all like landmines. And their personalities are also directly reflected in the interactive development of the game. Making the wrong choice will reduce their favorability, and the content of the options is completely random, without any strategies. It is almost obsessive-compulsive disorder. So in order to avoid torture and not to be humble and lick the dog, Akira embarked on another path of clearance. It takes 10 years to make someone like you, but it only takes a minute to hate you. Favorite rating. Dogs don't even brush. Even without the power bonus of the female protagonist, Akira, can still single-handedly challenge the gods of Takahara, from Tsushima Island to Hokkaido. Anyway, the game requires them to maintain emotional stability. So, what is a more unforgettable emotion than love? It's hate. So, for those who enjoy being alone, Xiangzi Xiu tends to harass her. If you think you are the best in the world, then let her kneel down and sing Conquest. If you think you are someone who is unknown and seeks short-sighted, then you must let her live to endure torture. In short, using animosity and cultivation skills is professional. Of course, according to the game's settings, the higher the level of hatred, the more the mechanism punishment will be. Including but not limited to increased expenses in major cities, decreased equipment explosion rates, increased emergencies, and increased negative impacts of black fog, but none of these are problems. Because no matter how difficult they are, there is a way to overcome them, and there is no consensus on how to cultivate a female lead. After determining his thoughts, Akira Sagazawa decisively began a high-difficulty self-limiting challenge, studying how to conduct a boss battle without the support of the female protagonist and with an increased level of hatred, which makes it easy for them to backstab him. After hundreds of hours of repeated attempts, Xiao Xiangzi finally cleared the game despite being betrayed and alienated by others. He even used the female protagonist's resentment to successfully craft the 5 major magic swords, triggering hidden achievements. See, I'll say it's hard to get a good impression, but it's easy to get a hatred. I can even choose the right one with my eyes closed. The list of creators on the computer screen scrolls to the end, and a beautiful ending CG pops up, along with a summary of achievements. Imperial Blade Envoy level. 99 map exploration rate. 100% Spirit Blade holding rate. 100% female leads hatred level. 100% game completion rate. 112% completed conclusion. Even if you are enemies with the world and the world. Is it with the female lead? At the end of the game, they were the culprits who prevented me from saving the world. Taking a glance at what seemed to be breaking through the hatred level of the bar chart, Akira took a screenshot and prepared to switch back to the desktop. When it was attached to the review, the speaker suddenly made a complete download sound. The day after tomorrow. Xiangzi Xiu looked at the prompt that popped up in the bottom right corner of the screen and murmured to himself, "Does this game have a new DLC?" He searched online but did not find any news about the discussion. Is it just an update? The production team is also too diligent. Even though sales have exploded. Akazawa Shio switched back to the game screen and found an option for future discussions prominently appearing on the initial menu. The level of hatred has been filled up, isn't it the execution conference the day after tomorrow? Xiao Xiangzi doesn't know what level of favorability this DLC is based on, but if it's to take on the progress of the game itself, isn't that even better? Anyway, he has defeated all the main enemies, but the female protagonist, who is comparable to a deity in the plot, rarely engages in combat. Without teaching this group of twisted personalities, the female protagonist who constantly stabs her back, Xiangzi Xiu's thoughts are not clear. With this in mind, he decisively pressed the option for future negotiations. In the next moment, Xiangzi Xiu felt the sky and earth spinning around, and countless fragments of memory flooded into his mind, causing a sudden surge of hunger. "I'm so hungry." Accompanied by a low voice, Akira Sagazawa disappeared from the room. Tokyo, outside the 3-story metropolitan area, is an impossible place. Xiangzi Xiu stood at the top of the tree, gazing at the towering wall to the west. He rubbed his groaning stomach and let out a sigh. "Why did you just come in?" The faint black mist veiled the view, and the smell of decay and burning in the air made people nauseous. From afar came the dull sound of spiritual sword armor, which was the collision of mechs. Everything seemed so real. Xiangzi Xiu spent 5 minutes accepting the fact that he had entered the game. Isn't it about being played to death by the female lead who is filled with hatred now? Xiangzi Xiu is very clear-headed. In the game, he is a hero who repels the gods and possesses powerful combat abilities. He is admired by everyone and is admired by beautiful women. But in reality, he is just a dilapidated swordsman with a background in armor craftsmanship. In terms of social status, he is the lowest-level warrior. Being able to fight is useless. When you come out to work, you need to pay attention to your power and background. A collapsing society does not require modern civilization to cover up. In every region, powerful forces control everything, and they are the aristocratic lords of this era. For example, the first female protagonist of the game, Utsunami Yenhua. He is the leader of the three imperial families, known as the Unification Society, who lead the Tokyo metropolitan area. He is also the top boss of Akira Sagawa. At the beginning of the game, due to the anger of the gods caused by the sister of Akira Sagazawa, she fled Tokyo. As the only child of the Sagazawa family, she was sold to Utsunami Yenhua and taken as a subordinate. But how could he, who was covered in bones, be pressed under him? Not to mention, after reaching a high level of hatred, it's like kissing your boss every day. He still remembers that in the later stages of the game, not only did he switch jobs to Kyoto, but he also repeatedly sabotaged her plans, treating the United Front as a perfect second or fifth child for leveling up, and falling into her hands would definitely have no good outcome. Xiangzi Xiu rubbed his stomach again, which made a strange noise, but ultimately chose to jump off the tree and walk towards the direction of the armor battle in the distance. Anyway, wherever there are people, there will definitely be supplies. Even if he happens to encounter the Imperial Saber envoy of the Utsunamiya family by chance, he will have to be a starving ghost. After 10 minutes, Akira arrived at a large lake. He has an impression that this place is the initial supply point for conducting an out-of-wall investigation, by adding 3 layers of Tokyo defense walls in the game. At the edge of the lake with thick black mist and miasma, Xiangzi Xiu saw 6 spirit sword armor fighting. 5-1. Although there have been many changes in the appearance of the armor, Xiangzi still recognized at a glance that the attacking party was a unified society armor called Crow's Dog, which is usually used to carry out secret missions. Dark steel wings, sharp red nose, agile legs, the strong sense of hunger made Xiangzi Xiu feel like he saw a moving meat cutlet, making him unconsciously walk towards the Crow Dog. But before he could crawl out of the cover, a sudden red light flickered from the corner of his eye, which made Akira wake up. Am I feeling dizzy from hunger? Xiangzi Xiu slapped his face with both hands, vigorously boosting his energy, and tapped the sparkling red jade at the corners of his eyes. In an instant, a property system panel that looked like a game popped up. Character: Xiangzi Xiu. Title: Useless person, attribute evaluation. F. Prop. None, Spirit Blade. None, Skills. Heart Sword, Heavenly Eye, Instant Step, and Extreme Intention 1 Blade Flow. A total of 67 items, wash up, demote, and have no spiritual knives. Is this just a talk in the future? It's too unfriendly to the squirrel party, isn't it? I still have some skills, but the character attributes are at the lowest F. level, so I can't even use a few. Although he had anticipated it earlier, seeing all the hard work he had accumulated to pass the level was overwhelming. A hint of sadness still swept through Xiangzi Xiu's heart. I originally wanted to rely on my strength to remain unyielding to others, but now it seems that even a Cucumber River boy can defeat him. At least we need to get a spirit knife to protect ourselves. Xiangzi Xiu looked at another besieged spiritual sword armor on the battlefield, suppressed his hunger, and explored its information. Nightblade God. Kikuchi Script, Quality. F. Skill. None, Effect. None, Style God. None, Whiteboard. Xiangzi Xiu looked at it several times and found that this armor was the most junk, rated as F's 3 knots armor. But if he doesn't admit it wrong, this is the equipment he specially forged with the ancestral spirit knife of the second male family in the game before the final battle. After all, the female lead doesn't work. If you want to win, you can only rely on your brothers. But it was this SSS-level spiritual sword armor that he had worked hard hundreds of times to conquer the secret realm and cut the snake head of the Nightblade God into small mountains. How did it turn into a whiteboard? At this moment, Xiangzi Xiu forgot his hunger and stared fixedly at the besieged armor, wishing to go up and question the second male, what was going on. Even if you are a noble young master from a famous family and have many spiritual knives, you cannot trample on my labor achievements like this, can you? But on second thought, with the strength and status of the second male, how could he possibly fall into being surrounded by a group of miscellaneous soldiers? Has the Tokyo United Front changed? In the game, the Hanyu family, who came from the second male background, also belongs to one of the three imperial families of the United Front, but their strength is not strong enough, and they can only let the Utsunomiya family monopolize power. Xiangzi Shio doesn't know how many years have passed since the end of the conversation, but even if the second male has passed away, the successor he found is too poor. The Night Blade God uses the Kikuchi script, one of the top 10 famous swords, to create a blade embryo. Even on a whiteboard, its basic attributes are stronger than those of the popular Yatengu, but now it is being suppressed and beaten by people. By the big lake, the 5 crow dogs cooperated harmoniously and pressed against the Night Blade God step by step. The latter, who was difficult to resist, wanted to make a desperate attempt to break through the encirclement, but was directly knocked back to its original form by crow dogs using their combined skills. The spiritual radiance of the Night Sword God's armor dissipated by the lake, and a white-haired girl fell from a high altitude into the lake, causing large splashes of water. She struggled to swim ashore and ran towards the forest where Xiangzi Shio was hiding. Several crow dogs followed behind with jia laughter, teasing the girl with a cat and mouse attitude. Xia Muyao, just a lowly person, can't you recognize your own status? Hurry up and offer your spiritual sword, it can still save your life. Tell the secret of Junyu Hanyu's disappearance, otherwise even if you are his adopted daughter, the family leader will not let you go. The white-haired girl known as Xia Muyao has a beautiful appearance, a curvy figure, and her bright red pupils are as firm and powerful as gemstones. She is not at all like a commoner, but rather like a famous lady in distress. She held the spirit knife to avoid the attack and tried her best to run towards the forest, but how could humans be faster than the spirit knife armor? With just a gentle leap, the crow dog stood in front of her, and the landing shockwave directly lifted the girl away. The messy branches tore through her wet black hair, leaving several bloodstains on her fair skin. The spirit knife that was released pierced through the sky and landed in front of Xiangzi Shumian, who had walked out of the forest. He approached and picked up his spiritual knife, looking at the muddy blade in silence. If you heard me right, then the imperial swordsman said that Xia Muyao is the second son, also known as Junyu Hanyu's adopted daughter. At what time will the conversation take place the day after tomorrow? As someone of his own age, he has adopted his daughter. By the big lake, several crow dogs watching the excitement stopped laughing and turned their heads to look at Xiangzi Shio, who was picking up his spiritual sword. They are wondering why there are unwelcome guests breaking into the premises that have already been sealed off in advance. After a moment of silence, the imperial sword envoy closest to Xiangzi Shio shouted, "Little ghost, quickly present the spiritual sword." Xiangzi Shio ignored him and carefully brushed away the mud with his sleeve, feeling the touch of the spiritual knife in his hand. The blade is pitch black all over, embroidered with gilded dark patterns. The blade is exceptionally heavy, unlike an ordinary Tai-Dao. There is a reason for it. According to the game settings, the spirit knife is crafted by a Shinto swordsman with special skills after the arrival of Black Mist. It is said to be a spiritual sword, but in fact, it is a spiritual power aggregator, like a spirit ball, which seals the nearly 10-meter-high spiritual armor inside, making it easier for the imperial swordsman to fight in the Black Mist. I didn't expect to be able to touch the spiritual sword I personally crafted. Xiangzi Shio let out a breath, and from that moment on, he truly felt the sensation of time travel. Moreover, he was originally worried that games were games and reality was reality, but as soon as he touched the spiritual knife, he knew that he was still the god slayer who had experienced countless battles and suppressed the 80,000 gods in Kyoto alone. Xiangzi Shio held his spiritual sword and walked towards Xia Muyao, who had fallen to the ground. No matter why she crossed the river, since she is the adopted daughter of the second son, Xiangzi Shio cannot refuse to save her in love and reason. For nothing else, I will take care of your wife and daughter. Xia Muyao, who had twisted her ankle, struggled up and shouted anxiously, don't come over, run away. Hey, you scumbag, do you want to die? The ignored crow dog, Yudao, had a cold voice. He didn't expect a lowly person living outside the wall to not only plead for mercy but also walk towards him. No, do you want to die? Xiangzi Xiu stood in front of Xiaomuyao, facing the huge blade of Yatengu. He pulled out his spiritual sword and said to her with wide red eyes, "Watch it, Night Blade God uses it this way." End of this chapter. Chapter 2. The Devourer. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 2. The Devourer, Draw the Knife. Xiangzi Xiu pulled out his spiritual sword, and a brilliant spiritual light burst out from the scabbard, shining like black pearls. A black snake with a sharp single horn flashed faintly in the air, and Akira knew that it was the incarnation of the Night Blade God when summoning armor. Each spirit sword armor is built with demons and gods as its core. The armor driver, also known as the sword wielder, is the owner of the armor. On the opposite side, there was no exception. The red-faced and long-nosed heavenly dog phantom was displayed on all 5 armored units, especially the raven heavenly dog, which was attacking Akira. Surprisingly, it disregarded the orders of the Imperial Saber Envoy and directly disarmed its armor form. There is no way. This is the suppression of the Night Sword God Chrysanthemum text, which was once at the SSS level as a demon on the same level. Even if it is currently a 3-no whiteboard, it is still stronger than the standard Raven Dog. What a joke! Who the hell are you? Exclaimed the armored swordsman in fear. How could a lowly person outside the wall, a lowly person who had never even attended a spiritual initiation ceremony, summon a spirit sword armor? Even if you have the qualifications to be an imperial swordsman, you can't just pick up a spiritual sword and use it. I'm just a passing imperial swordsman. As smooth and natural as breathing, Xiangzi Xiu summoned the Night Blade God. Kikuchi script, and the spiritual light enveloped Xiangzi Xiu. After the light dissipated, he realized that he had entered the interior of the armor, and his vision suddenly rose. The Crow Tengu, who originally needed to look up, was no more than that. Don't panic. It's just a lucky little ghost. If we can defeat the Night Blade God once, we can defeat him again. Nakata. Hurry up and summon the armor. The commander of the Raven Sky Dog team who arrived later scolded the Imperial Saber Envoy who had released the Spirit Saber. Okay. The Imperial Swordsman quickly summoned the Raven Heavenly Dog, and the field returned to a 5-on-1 situation. After exercising his wrist and confirming that the Night Blade God was as familiar as his own arm, Xiangzi Xiu picked up Xiaomuyao lying on the ground, his palms clenched weakly to avoid accidentally injuring her when he hit her. Xiaomuyao said calmly, "Let me go down, I will hinder you." She didn't know why Xiangzi Xiu could also use the Night Blade God, but she knew that the Night Blade God was not in good condition and could not even beat the opponent with all his strength, let alone with one hand. Xiangzi Xiu remembered the handsome male second character in the game, who had a bright smile and was assigned to block the knife every day. He sighed deeply and said, "No, your adoptive father and I are comrades in arms. You can call me Xiangzi uncle, I can't let you get hurt." Xiangzi Xiu's answer came as a surprise to Xiaomuyao. She replied in silence, "I should be older than you." Xiangzi Xiu didn't explain too much and swung his knife towards the nearest crow dog. The battle was imminent. And the Night Blade God is truly a decisive weapon of the past. Even if it's a whiteboard, even if it's a 1.on.1 battle, it won't fall behind in the face of the experienced Crow Tengu. Taking advantage of the speed advantage of the Night Blade God, Xiangzi Xiu moved flexibly and tore through the Crow Dance, composed of Crow Tengu. 2 sword wielders facing the enemy were directly disarmed, returned to their original form, and fell into the lake. For a moment, the scene became anxious. The commander of the Raven Dog 5 team is wondering if they should call for backup support. How can any lowly person use the legendary spirit sword of the Yusheng family, and the technique is so exquisite? On the side, Xiang Zhixiu, who had the advantage, did not continue to attack. Instead, he pulled apart and stopped to ask Xia Muyao in his hand, Yuzua's niece, how old is your adoptive father this year? Xiang Zhixiu found that the level of the opponent's spiritual sword armor was not as low as imagined, and even 3 ranks higher than the Knight Sword God. Yatian Go Chiba Village Masamyun 3 styles, quality. C. Skills. Crow Dance, Speed, Effect. Self-Explosion, Shirshen. Raven Tengu, moreover, even if the rating is high, the Lingdao is actually the Chiba Murakami Masamyun that he has never heard of, and it has been improved to the 3rd generation. This version update is a bit fast, he must figure out how many years have passed since the clearance outcome. Xia Miao said, I don't know the exact age, but I should be almost 50 years old this year. Shozawa Shio was surprised and said, 50 years old. At the time of customs clearance, Xiang Zhixiu was only 20 years old and had just reached the legal drinking age. So, nearly 30 years have passed all at once. Xia Muyao. What's wrong? Xiang Zhixiu stabilized his mind and said, it's nothing, I just feel that the recent development of spiritual knife technology is very fast. Although the iteration is fast, there are always only ace drivers without ace armor. Even if we lead for 30 years, as the core, Yatengu is still Yatengu, and my whiteboard Night Blade God is still killing indiscriminately. With this thought in mind, Xiang Zhixiu manipulated the Night Blade God to leap forward and prepare for a quick battle. As soon as he jumped into mid-air, he felt that the wind today was very noisy. The Night Blade God unexpectedly disintegrated halfway. Xiang Zhixiu couldn't adjust enough and almost threw himself into the lake. What's going on? After relying on his skills to land in an instant, he held Xia Muyao in confusion. He has never encountered such a situation before, how could the armor naturally disintegrate? The opposite side is not a top-tier divine armor. Ha, it's really lucky. Do you also use spiritual sword armor of the level of Night Blade God? The Crow Heavenly Dog Imperial Saber Envoy, who was wandering beside him, laughed and took the opportunity to suppress the attack. Your aptitude is insufficient, you have no spiritual power, you lowly people. Insufficient qualifications make it impossible to use advanced spiritual knives. Xiu Xiangzi clicked on the system and instantly understood the meaning of qualifications. In the game, qualifications are levels and attributes. If you can't level up, you can't unlock advanced spiritual knives, so you won't encounter the problem of disintegration. In reality, a part of the evaluation of qualifications includes spiritual power. If spiritual power is insufficient, it cannot meet the consumption of advanced spiritual knives. Xiang Zhixiu's attribute rating has been downgraded from SSS level to F level, which can be said to be extremely poor in qualifications. No wonder. Although the Night Blade God is a whiteboard, it used to be a luxury top-of-the-line large car, and the once God Slayer, Akira, has become a pony and unable to pull the large car. Moreover, in reality, a person's qualifications are inherently constant and can tap into their potential, but there are almost no methods for upgrading. Can I only use the miscellaneous fish armor in the future? Is it a punishment that fills the female protagonist's hatred? Xiang Zhixiu's heart sank, but before he could take care of his sadness, he was chased by Yatengu in front of him. Dalit, hurry up and offer your spiritual sword, otherwise I will make your death very painful. The situation is turning around quickly, and the seasoned Yatengu Yudao envoy will never give Xiang Zhixiu a chance to catch his breath. Xiang Zhixiu picked up Xia Muyao and turned around to sneak into the dense forest shrouded in black mist, relying on the terrain to escape pursuit. Although there are hidden warcraft in the forest, falling into the hands of warcraft is better than being killed by Raven Dog. I have a medicine for restoring spiritual power. On the way to escape, Xia Muyao took out a colorful candy from the full inner lining and handed it to Xiang Zhixiu. Even if I eat it, I can't deal with the crow dogs outside. Is there any place I can go? Xiangzi Xiu recognized it as a mediocre tonic in the game. However, it was better than nothing. He still opened his mouth and ate it. After all, he felt very hungry as he wore more and more clothes, and urgently needed to replenish his sugar. Weno was originally a training ground for the academy, and they dare not chase after you. What's wrong? Xia Muyao asked with concern. The candy melted at the entrance, but Akira felt that it not only failed to replenish spiritual power, but also splashed like a water droplet into the boiling oil, causing a more intense pain than before. The sour water burned the stomach wall and rushed straight to his throat. Xiangzi Xiu tilted his body and leaned against the tree next to him, covering his stomach with a painful expression on his face. Hungry, so hungry. Xiangzi Xiu was dizzy and eager for something to fill his empty stomach. Anything is fine. At this moment, 6 armor pieces fell from the sky, wielding swords to cut through large areas of dense forest. In addition to the 5 crow heavenly dogs, there was also a smaller gray armor. Upon glancing at it, Akira Sagazawa recognized it as the ninja-type armor responsible for surveillance, the kamikaze itachi, but it was unclear which type of spiritual sword system it was. Xia Muyao, the head of the family, has something to say. If you are willing to cooperate with us, you will be the true miss of the Yusheng family. The gray sickle weasel made a piercing sound, and Akira instinctively frowned. Xia Muyao stood up with a limp and repaired Xiangzi behind him, saying, 7 years ago when my adoptive father went missing, I was kicked out of the Yusheng family. What are you saying now, Mississippi? It's ridiculous. The gray sickle weasel remained noncommittal and instructed the crow dog, there's no other way, let's take action. The long sword of the crow dog cleaved through the obstructing tree, and Shozua Shio drew his sword to parry, but was unexpectedly bounced out. Little devil, beyond measure. Yetiango Yudao spat and turned to look at Xia Muyao, who had been knocked down. The latter straightened his neck, fearless of death. He didn't want to kill the beautiful white-haired girl who looked like a doll, but the master's command was absolute. He didn't hesitate, raised his arm, aimed at Xia Muyao, and waved his long sword. However, the feel of the long knife made him wonder, it was not the feeling of cutting into the human body. I'm so hungry, can I eat you? Under the armor of the spirit blade, Xiangzi Xiu protected Xia Muyao with one hand, carrying the night blade god and carrying a huge blade, with large blood stains on his shoulder. But he didn't feel any pain at all. Instead, he felt a burst of joy in his heart because he knew he finally didn't have to go hungry. Target contacted. Yatengu, rating. C, status. Devopable, do you want to devour it? End of this chapter. Chapter 3. You don't want your whereabouts to be known, do you? You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 3. You don't want your whereabouts to be known, do you? Devouring is an option in the game, and Akira is not unfamiliar with it. In the game, characters who want to upgrade and enhance the quality of spiritual sword armor rely on demon gods, also known as dog food. Every spirit blade armor that has been upgraded from an F.level whiteboard to an SSS level is piled with mountains of corpses on its back. The crow dog with a rating of C, which can only be called copper dog food, is naturally among them. Xiangzi Xiu finally found out why he had traveled through time and was very hungry. Because it is natural for people to eat when they are hungry. However, the food he wants to eat is somewhat special. Swallow. Xiangzi Xiu silently recited in his heart, and in an instant, a strange force poured into his palm, like sweet spring jade liquid nourishing his dry body. Is this the smell of demons? That's really good. On the other side, the kamikaze Imperial Saber, who was in command, asked the stunned Crow Tengu, hey, what are you staring at? However, the devouring crow dog Yudao's voice trembled and he couldn't even speak fluently. Let go of me, let go of me. Kamikaze was about to ask again when he noticed that the crow's heavenly dog Imperial Saber envoy had already removed the armor of the spirit saber, and his eyes were pale, fainting on the ground. Have you exhausted your spiritual power? You useless guy. The sickle weasel sword envoy instructed another crow dog, kill them all, there's no need to leave a corpse. Ye Tian-go stepped forward and raised his knife, fiercely smashing Xiangzi Xiu, who seemed to be savoring the delicious food. The sharp blade mixed with a rapid breaking sound, splashing a large amount of dust. Xiangzi Xiu used instant steps to dodge the attack, stepped on the blade of the crow dog, jumped into the air, and pressed his hand on its head to devour it. One by one, Akira shuttled back and forth between the tall armor. After a moment, all 5 imperial swords except for Kamikaze Itachi were unable to rise again. He wiped the corner of his mouth with an unsatisfied expression and looked at the gray weasel. I don't know how your taste is. The sickle weasel's sword made his heart inexplicably flustered. He really wanted to figure out why all the crow dogs that were touched by Sagazawa Shio fell into a coma. Why does a little ghost make him feel the oppressive feeling of life and death crisis? But years of experience have taught him that the first and most thing he should do, rather than struggling with something wrong, is to escape. The gray sickle weasel waved its silver and white claws, tearing open the dense forest on its escape route, while also using its skill wind escape to accelerate its escape. But Xiangzi Xiu, who devoured the 5-headed crow dogs one after another, not only replenished his spiritual power, but also successfully promoted to the E-level Imperial Saber Envoy. In his eyes, the weasel is a mouse waiting to die. He summoned the Night Blade God and easily caught up with the fleeing sickle weasel, and with just one strike, he was disarmed. The fallen Kamikaze Imperial Saber screamed in embarrassment, "Don't kill me, you're from outside the wall, right? Don't you want to enter Tokyo? I can make you join the Hanyu family and become an elite warrior of the United Front." Entering Tokyo, said Akira Sagazawa's knife in mid-air. "Yeah, don't you want to live a safe and luxurious life instead of living outside dangerous walls?" The Kamikaze Imperial Saber saw him stop and continued to persuade, "You can control the Night Blade God, which shows that you have top-notch qualifications. Moreover, you are handsome and may even be appreciated by the head of the household, and even become the head of the household's husband." Husband? Who is the head of the Yushin family now? Yuzuki Hanyu is a close friend of the Utsunomiya Daemon God and a supreme figure in the Unification Society. Do you know Lord Utsunomiya? She is the backbone of the Unification Society. Of course, even outside the wall, I know her name. Lord Utsunomiya has recruited a wide range of imperial envoys. As a young and capable person like you, you can definitely shine in the United Front. As long as you kill Xiaomuyao, I will recommend you to Tokyo. After thinking for a moment, Xiangzi Xiu asked Xiaomuyao, who was limping up with his sword, "Why did they want to kill you?" Yuzuki Hanyu is the younger sister of Junyu Hanyu, the second male character in the game. Although she is a proud and delicate elder brother, her personality should not be so bad as to target her brother's adopted daughter. Xiaomuyao didn't answer, but instead stared at Xiangzi Xiu and said, "I know who you are. You are Xiangzi Xiu, a good friend of his adoptive father, a hero who caused a big uproar in Gao Tianyuan 30 years ago, and a promiscuous man who is not clear about the 5 great Ming gods." What did Junyu Hanyu say? Well, my adoptive father often misses the days back then. Upon hearing these words, the Kamikaze Imperial Saber made him feel like his whole body had fallen into an ice cave. As a spy ninja of the Hanyu family, he certainly knew the secrets of the past, but the Imperial Saber, who was like a shooting star crossing the sky, did not die under the punishment of God tomorrow. You heard me, I guess Utsunomiya Lianhua would love to dismember me. I won't be able to go to Tokyo, said Shozawa, reaching out and pressing his hand on his head. No. As far as I know, Lord Utsunomiya. Before the sickle weasel's sword could finish speaking, he convulsed and fell into a coma. Xiangzi Xiu withdrew his hand and looked at Xiaomuyao, feeling mixed. It has been 30 years since then. Xiaomuyao said, "Unfortunately, my adoptive father has gone missing, otherwise he would definitely hope to see you. Xiangzi Xiu. Why did he go missing? Xia Moyao shook her head, unwilling to talk much. She drew out her sword and stabbed the unconscious kamikaze imperial saber. The entire movement was too natural, to the point where Sagazawa Shio couldn't stop it in time. The bloodstains pumped out by the arteries splattered onto Xia Muyao's white hair, making her appear somewhat alluring. She shook her sword into its sheath, revealing a shallow smile, and said to the stunned Xiangzi Xiu, "My adoptive father said you are the natural enemy of the gods. Now it seems that this is indeed the case. This kind of thing must not be leaked to unrelated people." Xiangzi Xiu didn't expect Xia Muyao's observational ability to be so keen. With just a few words, he guessed his own ability. The remaining Crow Tengu. Well, since my adoptive father went missing, Aunt Saki has become more and more irritable. Even if I don't take action, they have no chance of surviving. Yuzuru Hanyu approached Shozawa and breathed out a sweet breath. And, hero, you probably don't want your whereabouts to be known by Utsunamiya Daming, do you? Xiangzi Xiu. Tokyo, Musashi Tower. Today is the day of the regular meeting of the upper level of the United Front. The top of the tower, towering for thousands of kilometers, boasts a picturesque scenery. The important figures in command of Tokyo stand by the window, chatting in small groups. The people in Kyoto have become increasingly rampant lately, and even Hakone Pass has their spies. Fujiwara Daimyo is visiting Tokyo, and some of the noise cannot be avoided. Are you really going to fight? The fight is just right, and we can also intervene in the Black Mist production in Kansai. Since ancient times, Tokyo has been the center of the country, and the United Front was initially established with the aim of unifying the archipelago. But 30 years ago, a young hero suppressed the conflict between Kansai and Kanto out of thin air, jointly dealing with demons and gods outside of humanity, which made some members of the United Front unhappy. Now, the influence of the dead is gradually dissipating, and the false peace is about to be torn apart. Ambitious individuals naturally have their own agendas. For example, it is time to adjust the position of the three imperial families in the United Front. The meeting is about to begin, please take your seats. A waiter stood in the hall and shouted in a gentle voice. The scattered big shots glanced at each other, tacitly stopped talking, walked towards the long table, and found a seat to sit down. 5 minutes later, the door was opened and a woman walked in. She was the actual owner of the United Front, the great Ming god guarding Tokyo. Utsunamiya Lotus Flower. The atmosphere in the meeting room instantly became solemn and cold, so quiet that even a needle could be heard falling to the ground, except for the clattering of high heels hitting the floor. The attendees looked straight at each other, but they all had a question in their hearts. Why did Utsunamiya Yenhua bring a spiritual sword in? Only Yusheng Saki frowned slightly. Others didn't know, but she knew that the knife was left by Sang Shio. Utsunamiya Yenhua walked to the front seat and placed her spiritual sword on the table. Her voice was cold and she said, starting from the back of the seat, report in sequence. Yes. The person called upon immediately stood up and presented their work results in a slightly trembling voice. Utsunamiya Yenhua leaned back in her chair, changing her usual serious attitude. She propped her head with one hand and stared absent-mindedly at the spiritual knife on the table. After a lap, the secretary behind her quietly stepped forward, reminding her that the subordinates had finished reporting. Utsunamiya Yenhua seemed to have not heard her. She remained silent, her index finger continuously tapping on the table, and everyone's heartbeat fluctuated up and down with her movements. Before the atmosphere became oppressive again, she took a soft breath and stood up to announce. From now on, Tokyo will be under martial law. Hakone Pass, Chiba, Nasu, and Kamakura will be sealed off, and all entry and exit activities will be suspended. All C.level and above Imperial Guards of the United Front will be dispatched to conduct searches, and anyone without reliable proof will be arrested. As soon as this statement was made, everyone in the conference room had different expressions of joy and worry, but no one dared to speak up and question the decision of Utsunami Yenhua. They speculate that war is indeed about to be declared against Kyoto. However, they all guessed wrong. After the people in the conference room finished leaving, Yuzuki Hanyu, who was sitting on the right side of Lianhua in Utsunamiya, asked, "What do you want to do? How should Kyoto explain it?" Utsunamiya Lianhua said, "He's back. He. Shio Xiangzi." Sasuke Hanyu's cold and delicate face almost shattered. "Really?" Utsunamiya Lianhua said, "People can lie, knives cannot." Yuzuki Hanyu hugged his chest with both hands and glanced at the blood-red blade. "Even if we find it, what can we do? Disrupting established plans for a man. It's not like you." Utsunami Yenhua caressed her slightly trembling spiritual sword and said, "Of course, the unfinished punishment will continue. Don't you want to see his expression kneeling down and licking my boots?" Yuzuki Hanyu remained expressionless and said, "I don't want to." Leaving the Musashi Pagoda, she returned home and picked up the report on the failed mission to intercept Xia Muyao a few days ago, muttering to herself. "Such a clean and decisive battle. Is it really you?" After thinking for a while, she stood up and looked at the map of Kanto behind her. Her gaze stopped at the next location where Xia Muyao should appear. Yunohara. On the other hand, although Xia Muyao was chased by her aunt, she didn't seem to be in a hurry to escape. Still following the established plan, I went to Yunohara to fulfill my responsibilities as a student at the Imperial Academy. To undergo a 3-month trial at a station far from Tokyo and obtain the qualification to graduate from the Imperial Academy. Fortunately, I found a satisfactory job at the United Front. With nowhere to go, Sagazawa Shio had to follow her and temporarily treat Yunohara as a hiding place before making any plans. "Xia Muyao, who is he?" "My boyfriend." End of this chapter. Chapter 4. I love making iron the most. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 4. I love making iron the most. Yunohara City is the end of the United Front's reach. Except for the Imperial Sword Envoy who did the task, there were almost no outsiders coming, which was very remote. However, Shozawa was very satisfied because he heard that Tokyo is under martial law and is aggressively pursuing people without identification. As a black man, Xiangzi Shio is very fortunate to have escaped a disaster. However, hiding is not a solution, we still need to quickly craft a spirit sword with self-protection ability. Xiangzi Shio left his residence and walked towards the Lingdao armor workshop. After arriving at Yunohara, he claimed to be a blacksmith, lost his identification, and pretended to be Xia Muyao's boyfriend, using her as a guarantor, successfully avoiding routine investigations. Of course, there are some flaws in the identity statement, which cannot dispel the suspicion of being spies of other forces, but this is not a problem. Because Yunohara is truly a rural area, most blacksmiths are unwilling to come over, and the imperial swordsmen stationed here will not spare skilled swordsmen. However, Xiangzi Shio comes from a family of craftsmen, and forging knives is an ancestral skill. Moreover, after devouring the crow dog, the system panel unlocked a new feature called forging, making it easy to become a knife maker. Xiangzi Shio skillfully turned into a small alley, entered the workshop, greeted the master craftsman, and then entered the room assigned to him. Entering the room, a heat wave struck and the temperature suddenly rose. Xiangzi Shio took off his coat and placed it on the table, walking towards the huge fireplace in the center. There were complex talismans and materials next to the fireplace, as well as several spiritual knives waiting to be repaired. Without any accidents, repairing the spirit knife is his job today. Xiangzi Shio picked up one of the spiritual knives and checked the information. Girl Spider. Musashi type, rating. B+, status. Damaged, repair materials. Wasteland Soul Steel, Plastic Iron Charm, Ape Ghost Skin, Luhua Fruit. After reading a bunch of repair materials, Xiang Zishou silently roast. If the damage is so serious, it's better to build a new one. However, reforging is impossible. Reality is not a game, it is not a one-click success by pressing the Forging Repair button. It usually takes several days to repair a spirit knife, and forging a spirit knife requires starting from a month, not to mention the significant amount of effort expended during this period. He doesn't want to go bald at a young age. Fortunately, I have a vision and can save some effort. Xiao Xiangzi opened the system panel. Character. Xiangzi Xiao, title. Useless person, attribute evaluation. Prop. None, spirit blade. Night blade god, crow heavenly dog, sickle weasel, skills. Heart sword, heavenly eye, instant step, and extreme intention one blade flow. A total of 67 items, forging proficiency. Tianmu. This Tianmu skill is a skill obtained by Xiangzi Xiao by defeating Tianmu, a deity revered as the god of forging and metallurgy. Can provide Xiangzi Xiao with the highest level of forging bonuses, and the forging skill can be directly changed from F level to S level. In the game, the extraordinary and unconventional spirit sword armor in Akira's hand can be said to exist out of the ordinary, all achieved through Tianmu skills. According to the system prompt, Xiangzi Xiao collected the necessary materials from the warehouse, placed them in the furnace, and quenched and melted them. The body is also like an experienced old knife maker, relying on instinct to skillfully repair knives without any trouble. Without any worries, Xiangzi Xiao has a dual purpose, constantly releasing his thoughts. He has been thinking for the past few days, what should be done next. Wearing it back is unlikely, we can only survive in this world. But due to the animosity of the female protagonist, Akira's situation is extremely dangerous. After all, a despicable guy who fights against himself every day and dances in the minefield suddenly appears after disappearing for 30 years. The outcome is self-evident. And the current identity of the female lead has been roughly understood by Xiangzi Xiao, all of whom are high-ranking and influential figures, making it effortless to crush him. So, the 5 female protagonists cannot go to the big city they are in. Moreover, one must remain low-key and never expose any suspicious behavior to attract their attention and association. For example, the ability to devour gods, which is highly personal, cannot be made public to the world. Even if you don't want to be chased, be wary of divine retaliation. Because according to Xiaomuyao, it seems that it was because his abilities were exposed that he was executed by the gods. So, Xiangzi Xiao believes that his current most important thing is to level up and save his life. When he is besieged, he can make the other party sit down and reason with you, hey, focus on your work. A voice pulled Prime Minister Zishou back to reality, and he kept holding his hands. He looked up at the speaker and sighed, Miss Tiqua Qiansha, outsiders are not allowed to enter the workshop. She is a good friend of Natsumu and a member of the same team. When she heard that Akira Sagazawa was Natsumu's boyfriend, she intentionally or unintentionally approached him. The spirit knife in your hand belongs to our team. Why can't I see how my knife has been tossed and turned? Yuki Qiansha casually grabbed the collar, fanned hard, revealing a large snow-white collarbone. However, it's really hot here. If it's hot, you can go out. Hey, they want to see you work, said Teak Chi Sha with a mischievous smile as she straightened her towering chest. Otherwise, I might as well take off my shirt, after all, there are no outsiders here. Miss Yuki, please take care of yourself. The workshop was very hot, and the face of Tiqua Qiansha turned red, like a ripe peach. Her pure white forehead oozed sweat, and her white shirt quickly soaked, revealing her round skin, which was very provocative. What's the matter? You won't know if you don't say you're far away, she smiled and approached Xiangzi Xiao, bringing a refreshing fragrance. Her eyes were burning as she stared at him and said, oh, are you really boyfriend and girlfriend with Yao? Why not? But based on my understanding of Yao, It's hard for me to imagine her having a boyfriend. This indicates that I have strengths that you don't know. Xiangzi Xiu interrupted her and took out the spiritual knife from the stove. Your group's spiritual knife has been repaired. Yuki Qiansha put away her teasing expression and said seriously, you shouldn't be fooling me so quickly, right? As the envoy of the Imperial Sword, the Spirit Sword is their life guarantee, and it cannot be taken too seriously. The demon battles she encountered in the Black Mist before were very intense, and she was prepared to take a short and long vacation during the time of her spiritual cultivation knife. But it was repaired in less than a day when it was delivered. Isn't that right? You'll know it by experiencing it firsthand. Xiangzi Xiu was preparing to fish for a few days before taking it out, but judging from his posture, it was difficult for him to guarantee that he would not be caught by Tiqui Qiansha. After all, for some reason, she seemed particularly interested in herself. If you ask some detailed questions about your preferences and habits later on, Xiangzi Xiu cannot guarantee that he can answer them, so it is the right way to quickly dismiss her. Yuki Qiansha picked up a spiritual knife, closed her eyes and felt the flow of spiritual power. After a while, she opened her eyes and looked up and down at Xiangzi Xiu, showing an incredible expression. How did you do it? It's like just cutting a blade. Of course, it's cheating for armor below the S. level, hitting the hammer more is considered my distrust of the god of forging and metallurgy. Xiangzi Xiu waved his hand and handed her all the spiritual knives on the table, saying, these should all belong to your college. Take them all back. Yuki Qiansha gave him a deep glance and said, I mean, are you really repairing it seriously? If there's a problem with the spirit knife, the academy will have to settle the accounts with you. Of course not a problem. Xiangzi Xiu pointed to the highest-rated girl spider, and said. By the way, this knife belongs to your group, right? The damage is obviously abnormal. Tell her, the assassin-type armor should cooperate honestly, don't always think about frontal attacks, it will take a lot of materials. The girl spider is A/B level armor, how could it be our turn to use it? Tiqui Qiansha rolled her eyes and approached to take the girl spider. Oh, then I'll go back and tell her. After Yuki Qiansha left, Xiangzi Xiu returned to the fireplace, looking at a pile of materials and thinking about how to create a suitable spiritual sword armor for himself. On the other hand, Yuki Qisha returned to the college campus and distributed the repaired spiritual knives to her team members. According to convention, the Imperial Swordsman is usually a group of 5 people, responsible for supporting, investigating, attacking, and other roles. When carrying out tasks in the dark mist of the wilderness, there should be no less than 3 people, which is the experience accumulated with life. Yuki Qiansha is the team captain, responsible for all arrangements within the team. Captain, didn't you send it for repair? Why did you get it back so quickly? Asked a girl who was wiping her hair with a towel. Yuki Qisha smiled and looked at Xia Muyao reading by the window, saying, thanks to Yao's boyfriend, he helped us fix it first. Ah. Is he okay? Yao's boyfriend has great skills, you can give it a try. Captain, despicable. Hey, what I'm talking about is the spirit knife repair technique. Where did you go? Seeing that Xia Muyao was still reading and didn't choose to interrupt, Yuki Qiansha shook her head, picked up the girl spider, and walked towards the area where the master of the spiritual knife was located. In the center of Yunohara's base, far away from the academy's base, Yuki Qisha stood in front of a gate after several searches. She took a few deep breaths and reached out to knock on the door. Lord Kawakami, I am a student of Tokyo's 7th Imperial Saber Academy, Tiqui Qisha. The captain of the 13 Squadron, who was saved by you the day before yesterday, specially delivered the Spirit Saber Girl Spider to you. The owner of the room let out a puzzled soft voice, followed by a cold voice, come in. Yes. Yuki Qiansha clenched her slightly trembling fist and pushed the door in. She couldn't help feeling so nervous, because the owner of this spiritual sword was the confidant of the Utsunomiya Daemon God, the famous S.level Imperial Sword Envoy of the Unification Society, who once killed hundreds of disaster gods and saved the hero of Kamakura. Chuanqing Shi. Yuki Qiansha entered the room with ordinary decorations. Chuanqing Saya, dressed in a black military uniform, stood by the window and turned to look at her, saying, "Could you please fix it?" Chuanqing Shayi is not surprising. As an ordinary level garrison, Yunohara lacks skilled craftsmen, and the severely damaged B.level spiritual sword still needs to be sent back to Tokyo. Yuki Qiansha shook her head and walked up to hand over the spiritual knife, saying, "No, it's not right, Lord Chuanqing. It's already fixed." Chuanqing Sha frowned slightly and said, "Only used for a day." She reached out to pick up the spiritual knife, closed her eyes, and felt the flow of spiritual power. After a while, she asked in surprise, "Did Ueno have a master swordsmith before?" End of this chapter. Chapter 5. Meet One Side. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 5. Meet One Side, Master Knife Craftsman. Yuki Qiansha was stunned for a moment. She knew that Xiangzi Xiu's repair skills were good, but she didn't expect to be called a master by S.level Imperial swordsman like Chuanqing Shayi. Just like the assessment grading of the Imperial Saber Envoy, there are also levels of blacksmith, apprentices, craftsmen, experts, masters, and masters. Among them, the master craftsmen who are comparable to S.level Imperial swordsmen are sparse and countable within the unified guild, and each one is not young. Xiangzi Xiu doesn't look as big as her. Why did she become a master? Well, the repairman not only repaired all the hidden wounds of this spiritual knife, but also added new skills. Chuanqing Sha pulled out her spiritual knife, and in an instant, a dark red spirit covered her whole body. After the light dissipated, the spider armor of the girl was worn by her. This is a concrete form, where every seasoned imperial swordsman can transform a nearly 10-meter-high spiritual sword armor into close-fitting armor. Yuki Qiansha took 2 steps back and asked enviously, added a new skill. When forging each spirit sword, corresponding skills will be generated based on the characteristics of the core demon deity. Chuanqing Saya was dressed in a sturdy suit, with a spider helmet covering her face and only revealing a pair of divine eyes, which seemed to be the reason for the armor repair. She went against the norm and explained to Tiki Qiansha. For example, the female spider is good at hunting prey alone, and her abilities in lurking and assassination are her specialties, which are also characteristics of this type of armor. The reason why I am still using the girl spider is because she can split out dozens of little spiders to act as an ear and eye detector. However, during the embryonic stage of this knife, the 4 souls of the female spider integrated into it were not complete, and the barren soul that dominated the battle was severely damaged. So the little spider, which could have been used to self-destruct and cover its escape, cannot play its due role and can only be rated as B. That's also why she suffered so much damage in the reconnaissance battle the day before yesterday, so, he repaired the girl spider's desolate soul. Even Yumu Qiansha, who comes from the background of the Imperial Saber Envoy, has a slight understanding of some common knowledge in forging knives. Initially, knife forging craftsmen were generally held by divine officials, who believed that all things had spirits and were divided into 4 souls. Wild souls are brave, close to soul palms, fortunate souls are in love, strange souls are wise, and all departments are able to merge into one. So, when forging their swords, they divided the captured demon gods into 4 souls according to the secret method and integrated them into the soul steel used to cast the spirit knife embryo. Practice has proven that the effect is perfect, and later became the theoretical foundation for guiding forging knife craftsmen. Yes, I found that little spiders can not only self-destruct, but also enhance their field of vision. Chuanqing Shayi extended his palm and in an instant, several small spiders with black background and red stripes appeared in his palm, with 8 compound eyes. The little spider twisted its round and bulging head, stretched out its slender long legs, and kept spinning in its palm. Teakwood Qiansha approached and reached out her finger to tease the spider, saying, "Little, so cute. I thought you were afraid of spiders." "No, spiders are timid and don't take the initiative to harm people." "Why are you afraid of them?" A spider followed its fingers and climbed onto the back of Teakwood Qiansha's hand. She was not afraid at all, but instead raised her hand and showed a bright smile to Chuanqing Saya. Chuanqing Sha was very happy, and her calm tone passed a hint of imperceptible excitement. "Your name is Yuki Qiansha." The battle response the day before yesterday was very good. Yuki Qiansha lowered her head and played with the spider, where, if it weren't for your timely rescue, our team would have been completely wiped out. "Well, it's not your fault. There has been another change on Soa's side. The expelled demon's southward invasion of Jiafei is not something that ordinary imperial swordsmen can handle. I remember that place was worshipped by the gods in Kyoto. Didn't they worship the gods on time? Anyway, it's a bomb near Tokyo, and even if it explodes, it won't affect the people of Kyoto." Kawakami Saya sheathed his sword and disarmed, "But don't worry, I have informed the college to readjust your assessment plan." "Thank you, Lord Chuanqing. Well, by the way, who is the person repairing this spiritual knife? Ueno shouldn't have such a craftsman." Yuki Qiansha tilted her head and said, "His name is Lin Shui, and judging from his age, he's not as old as me." "Lin Shui." Chuanqing Sha pondered. In her impression, there is a famous family of craftsmen in Tokyo that does not have the surname Lin. He is not from Tokyo. "I don't know about that." Yuki Qiansha spread her hand and observed her expression, deliberately saying, "He's Xia Muyao's boyfriend in our team." "Xia Muyao? From the Yusheng family?" Chuanqing Saya stopped talking and looked at Yuki Qiansha. "Tell him, I want to see him." Lin Shui is a pseudonym for Xiangzi Xiu. After all, the whole world is enemies, not changing the name would appear arrogant. As for the appearance, it seems that it is for the sake of getting along with the future conversation. Xiangzi Xiu's body is several years younger, so much so that he doesn't look like an adult at all, not as old as Xia Muyao. The advantage is that after the appearance changes, the handsome appearance does not decrease, and the chance of exposure is greatly reduced. The disadvantage is that speaking without intimidation. Lingdao Armor Workshop. Xia Muyao sat on the workbench, legs crossed, and asked Xiangzi Xiu, who was busy, "Do you have a good relationship with Yuki Qiansha? Where did you draw your conclusion?" "You are my boyfriend, don't be promiscuous." "So, where did you see that I had a good relationship with her? And isn't my boyfriend a fake relationship? Do you know, Xia Muyao? You need to call me Xiangzi Jizhen. She said she was conquered by your technology. Do you think I would take action against someone I just met for less than a few days? My adoptive father said you show mercy everywhere, and every time you go, beautiful women fall in love. If the task client is not a woman, you are unwilling to contribute. He's slandering me. Do you know that your adoptive father is the culprit that attracts bees and butterflies, causing Yuzuki Hanyu to get angry every day? When he was in Shikoku, the demon capital, he had the leisure to date Snow Maiden, but in the end, I rescued him." Speaking of excitement, Xiangzi Xiu turned his head to look at Xia Muyao sitting at the table. She leaned out and propped her head with both hands, listening attentively to her speech. Her slender and round thighs were intertwined, and her semi-transparent black hair was soaked in sweat, emitting a faint aroma with a hint of warmth. Noticing Xiangzi Xiu's gaze, Xia Mu swayed her legs and boasted, "Qiansha's legs are not as beautiful as mine." "Are you here to say that?" "Humph, average." Xiangzi Xiu forcefully twisted his head, picked up the unformed blade on the side, and began to observe. Xia Muyao jumped off the workbench, swaying her long silver hair and leaning against Xiangzi's slim body. "I'm here to meet you for dinner," she said, "I'm not hungry." "I'm hungry." Xia Muyao took away the knife embryo. Don't be fooled by Qiansha's carelessness, she's actually very scheming. If you don't be my boyfriend, well, you'll really expose yourself. Leaving the center of the base, Yuki Qiansha hummed a song and walked towards the college campus. Having a good relationship with Chuan Qingsha Yi will definitely lead to much smoother entry into the United Front in the future. It would be even better if I could work under her command, Yuki Qiansha thought, and turned into an inconspicuous coffee shop on the roadside. There weren't many customers in the store, so she found a seat by the window and waved to the boss, a cup of black coffee. The owner of the coffee shop was an old woman wearing a floral white apron and tentatively asked, "Black coffee is gone, is black tea okay?" "Ah, it's okay, black tea is also fine." While waiting for black tea, another housewife-dressed woman walked into the store. She walked across from the seat of the teak chiffon and waved to the boss, ordering a cup of black tea. After the black tea was delivered, the woman took a sip and asked, "Why are you going to see Chuanqing Saya?" "Send the knife." "What is the identity of Xia Muyao's boyfriend?" "Searching. Lord Yusheng is very concerned about this matter." "I know." Yuki Qiansha stirred the tea in the cup with a spoon, but she still couldn't figure out why the Yusheng family detective used black tea as a signal when making a joint. She hates sweets and spiders, but in order to make a living, she has to pretend to like them. Keep an eye on the man named Lin Shui and never let him run away. The housewife across from her was still chattering incessantly, and Yuki Qiansha felt annoyed. She picked up her cup, drank it all in one gulp, and walked across the street, entangled with Xia Muyao's man in the restaurant. I know. End of this chapter. Chapter 6. Mutual Feeding. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 6. Mutual Feeding Family Restaurant. Xiang Zhe is tasting island specialties, chicken curry rice, and carbonated soda water. Even in the near future, people's lives are no different from the era before the time of Akira. Or rather, hundreds of years after the arrival of Black Mist, people have slowly returned to the pre-apocalyptic scene. Everything is steadily improving. However, although the taste of these dishes is great, Xiangzi Xiu, who feeds on gods, cannot be satisfied at all. Compared with chicken in curry sauce, he prefers to eat crow dog, or cow ghost. When he was on his way before, he even hunted and killed a few cuckoo birds, and that taste was truly unique. Xia Muyao, who was sitting next to Xiangzi's self-cultivation, asked, "Isn't it to his taste?" "You know, I can't get used to these things," said Xiangzi, feeling bored as he bit on his straw for some reason. Although he had only traveled for just over half a month, he felt like a wild man who had eaten raw meat in the mountains for a lifetime, having not eaten cooked food for a long time. "I don't want to eat, nor am I interested." Xia Muyao looked worried and said, "If you don't eat on time, one day you will become a dehumanizing monster. Even the great gods, who are comparable to gods, still maintain human sleep and lifestyle habits." Xiangzi Xiu retorted, "The reason why Damingshun didn't go berserk was because they were emotionally stable, not because they ate and slept every day. A happy mood naturally leads to a stable mood." Aunt Sueji said that Utsunamiya Damingshun likes to eat sweets. If it were that simple, that would be great. Utsunamiya Yenhua likes to eat sweets because Xiangzi's cultivation has increased her hatred. When she was a secretary, she put lethal amounts of white sugar into bitter coffee every day, forcibly changing her taste. As for emotional stability, if you hate a man so much that your teeth itch, your mood will also be exceptionally stable and not at all upset. However, Xia Muyao seemed to feel that it was better to take action than to speak. She picked up a spoon and scooped up a mouthful of curry, placing her left hand under the spoon to prevent it from dripping, and brought it to Xiangzi Xiu's mouth. Still coaxing like feeding younger children, Forcefully feed. Why do two young people in their early 20s want to flash in public? Have you considered the mental health of nearby customers? In his past life, Shozua Xiu detested this kind of show of affection that seemed like no one else, so he quickly shook his head and refused. But the latter remained unmoved at all, even handing it forward and persuading in a shy voice, "There is a reward after eating." "Hello, what are you saying that makes people misunderstand? I shouldn't have offended you, is this a public execution? Didn't you see other customers looking over?" Xiangzi Xiu knows without hesitation that he must have been cursed by them in his heart. After all, being fed by a beautiful girl with white hair and red pupils is a lucky thing that cannot be encountered in a lifetime. Xiangzi Xiu could understand them, so just as he was about to speak, he was stopped by Xia Muyao's gaze, which was issuing a command. "Eat quickly." After a moment of silence, Xiangzi Xiu glanced at the people around him with his spare light and immediately noticed a clue. No wonder he sighed to himself and opened his mouth to swallow the curry in unison. Well, sweet curry, heresy. This is his reflection. After finishing the curry, Xia Muyao put down the spoon, pointed to Xiang Zishuo's plate, pointed to his own mouth, closed his eyes, put his hands on his knees, leaned forward, and obediently waited for feeding. Feed each other play, there's really you. Ignoring several resentful gazes, Xiangzi Xiu picked up a spoon, scooped a large spoonful of curry rice, and stuffed it into Xia Muyao's mouth. "It's so spicy." Xia Muyao coughed twice, his face turned red, and he reached out to pat him twice. "Starting over, it's too rough. You're even more troublesome than my little niece." When it comes to feeding, Xiangzi Xiu has only given his little niece complimentary food and has never heard of her complaints. "I'm your little niece." Xia Muyao licked the corner of his mouth, poked his head out again, shook his arm, and coquettishly said, "I still want, O.G. Sang." Unable to continue his performance, Xiangzi Xiu turned his head to look at the man standing awkwardly on the side with an ugly expression and said, "This classmate, what do you want to do with Xia Muyao?" Although Xia Muyao has personality problems, his appearance is very confusing. It is abnormal for a girl like her to remain single until now. Obviously, her previous feeding was a last-minute initiative to make the pursuer in front of her understand the difficulties and retreat. The man who was spoken to by Akira was very well managed in his facial expressions. He immediately squeezed out a smile and turned into a cheerful young man, asking kindly, "Hello, I'm Hirota Okada. Are you Natsume's boyfriend?" Xiangzi Xiu pointed out and said, "No, I'm her uncle." Generations cannot be chaotic, so he won't let Xia Muyao take advantage of him. Hirota Okada took a deep breath and said, "I asked seriously." Xiangzi Xiu. I also answered seriously. Xia Muyao leaned towards Xiangzi's self-cultivation and took a sip of his soda water, saying, "That's right, it's uncle's time now." Okada Hiroshi clenched his fists too tightly. He didn't want to see his crush playing some kind of role-playing game with other men. He asked in a tone that was not friendly, "I heard you are a blacksmith." Xiangzi Xiu said helplessly, "Yes, do you have a spiritual knife to repair?" He has also had several experiences of being used as a shield in his past life, so even with his eyes closed, he can think of the following development plot. Just you. An apprentice who doesn't even have the qualification to touch my knife and still wants to repair it. As the envoy of the Imperial Saber, Hiroshi Okada looked contemptuously at Hideyoshi Sagazawa and turned to look at Natsumoya, pleading in a tone, "I know he's just the man you brought to deal with me. I'm not angry." Xia Muyao said coldly, "He is my boyfriend." "I don't believe it." "Do you believe it or not?" "Okay." Hirota Okada looked at Shozawa and raised his chin, saying defiantly, "If you really like Natsume, break up with her as soon as possible." Xiangzi Xiu responded promptly and said, "Why?" "Because you don't deserve it." Hirota Okada proudly displayed his family background. "My father is A-B-level executive swordsman of the United Front, and my grandfather is an A-level swordsman guarding Nagano. Only I can bring happiness to Natsume. You, a swordsman, recognize your position early on." Xiangzi Xiu was not angry, but asked with great interest, "Okada, what level are you at?" C. level. After all, my grandfather is A. level, my father is B. level, and even if my son is worse, he will still be C. level, right? Xia Muyao laughed out loud and glanced at Hirota Okada with disdain, saying, he's only F level now, barely graduating from college, and probably only able to reach D level in his lifetime. Xiangzi Xiu shrugged and said, D. level Imperial Saber Envoy, it's really not as good as a generation. He didn't continue, but his disgust was evident, making Hiroshi Okada blush. That's better than you, an unremarkable craftsman. Okada Hirata clenched his fists and wanted to take action, but when he thought about any trouble that might happen during the college graduation assessment, even his family couldn't handle it. Cannot be impulsive. Even if it's murder, we can only let others do it. He suppressed his anger and said to Xia Muyao, you know, after the graduation assessment, the United Front will assign positions. As long as you speak up, I can let you stay in Tokyo and be a safe and prosperous envoy. I'm not snobbish, I just want you to think about what he can give you and what I can give you. After finishing speaking, Hirota Okada gave a deep glance at Hideyoshi Sagazawa and pushed the door open before leaving. The taste is too strong, how did the integration become like this? Xiangzi Xiu withdrew his gaze and sighed at the deteriorating world. He turned his head to look at the person who had walked over again and said, so, are you also here to persuade me to break up? End of this chapter. Chapter 7. Women in their 30s. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 7. Women in their 30s. The person who came is teak wood with 1,000 threads. She sat across from Xiangzi Xiu, holding soda water, and smiled, saying, I firmly support Yao, as long as she has no objections. However, I would like to remind you that although Hirota Okada may seem kind, he is actually irritable, and those who offend him in the academy will not have a good ending. Xiangzi Xiu frowned and said, you said he's going to kill me. Because of the small things that make people jealous, they can rise to the point of life and death. It is truly a shattered extraordinary world. The solution to things is always so simple and rough. However, since the position of the Imperial Saber Commissioner is high, killing a civilian is nothing. Yuki Qiansha nodded and said, be careful, it's always right. But she also wanted to see how this suddenly emerging boyfriend, Jun, would respond to the revenge of the Imperial Swordsman. Is it better to start first or wait for an opportunity? After all, according to the spies of the Yusheng family, this Lin Shui is likely to be a significant figure. Without much thought, Xiangzi Xiu immediately turned his head to look at Xia Muyao and pointed to the door, saying, okay, we've broken up. Now you go find Hirota Okada and plead for me. Xia Muyao pouted and shook Xiangzi Xiu's arm, saying, no, don't break up. I can do whatever you want me to do. Xiu Xiangzi. Really? Xia Muyao blushed and lowered his head to respond, I command you to be Hirota Okada's girlfriend, said Shozawa Sho mercilessly as he patted off Natsume's wrist. Xia Muyao remained silent for a moment and said sorrowfully, if it's Shui Jun's request. Yuki Qiansha quickly interrupted them and said, even if Yao agrees, I don't agree. Xiangzi, how could you be so bad? Is this really a significant figure mentioned by the Hanyu family spy? How did Xia Muyao fall in love with him? Xiangzi Xiu shrugged and said, what can I do? Haida Okada has a noble family background and can easily make me disappear with just one move. How can I compare to him as a blacksmith? Yuki Qiansha sighed and said, do you think letting go now can save your life? He's narrow-minded. Xiangzi Xiu turned his head and said to Xia Muyao, alas, are you Yu Zhao Qian? The Red Beauty Disaster Water had long known that she wouldn't be here. Yes, they are your little fox, Xia Muyao said in a pleasant and coquettish tone, panting in unison. Xiangzi Xiu. Then you can transform me into one. Xia Muyao. Ah. The teak chiffon beside her constantly undulated her chest, and she didn't understand why the two of them still had the intention of joking. Even if Xiangzi Xiu doesn't understand, Xia Muyao, you have been harassed for a long time. Don't you know what happens to girls who refuse Hirota Okada? You wouldn't think that your good aunt would even take action to help you handle this matter, would you? Yuki Qiansha reached out and knocked on the table, pulling their attention back and saying, however, there's also a solution. Xiangzi Xiu looked at her and said, "Oh, sir, teach me." Looking at his inexplicable expression of wanting to be beaten, Yuki Qiansha suddenly didn't want to say, "No, I don't need a boyfriend like you. You better go die." Xia Muyao sat next to Yumu Qiansha and coquettishly said, "Qiansha, come on." Yuki Qiansha took a few deep breaths, stopped her towering chest, and stared at Xiangzi Xiu, saying, "Chuanqing Saya wants to see you." After thinking for a moment, Shozawa realized that he didn't recognize a name and said, "Oh. Aren't you surprised?" "I'm surprised. Who are you lying to?" "That's an S-level Imperial Saber envoy. You don't know who she is, do you?" Yuki Qiansha's eyes tightened slightly, casting a sharp gaze that made Xiangzi Xiu realize that he seemed to have accidentally fallen into a trap. The smile on Xia Muyao's face solidified, and for a moment, the atmosphere on the dining table became unusually heavy. After a moment, Xiangzi Xiu sat up straight and said in a serious tone, "Of course I know Chuanqing Saya." Yuki Qiansha hugged her chest with both hands and raised her chin, asking, "Who is she?" "Beauty, S-level Imperial Swordsman, holds a high position in the United Front. I don't know why she cares about me. Can you help me level off Okada Hirata?" Based on the expression and tone of Yuki Chisha's mention of Kawakami Saya, Sagazawa Shio extracted this information. "Does your brain react quickly? However, I remember you said you came from Kamakura." "Yes, can you tell me what Lord Kawakami Saya did in Kamakura?" Yuki Qiansha's emphasis on good things made Xiangzi Xiu wonder whether this was irony or intentional misleading. A good deed done in Kamakura. Slaughtering the city. Saving people. He had no idea at all what kind of person Kawakami Saya was, and there was no appearance of this S-level Imperial Swordsman in the game. Who knows if she is a bloodthirsty battle maniac or a holy mother with a heart for the people. Xiangzi Xiu didn't understand why when Yuki Qiansha caught the opportunity, she would ask herself the bottom line. But choose one or two, choosing the wrong is hell. He doesn't want to be turned into a spy. No, how could a spy answer common sense incorrectly? "Humph, can't you say it?" Yuki Qiansha vaguely knew why the head of the Yusheng family had asked her to keep an eye on Xiangzi Xiu. Being in Kanto, as long as you have a little understanding of the news, you will know the name of Chuanqing Saya. Especially men, they see Kawakami Saya as their goddess, and how could Sagazawa Shio not know? There's a problem, a big problem. Although I have been practicing with the master craftsman all year round, I still know that she is a good person, said Shio Xiangzi, glancing at Xia Muyao's silent gesture. That was the communication code set by the two on their way to Unohara, just in case, and they didn't expect it to be used in the peaceful family restaurant. Sure enough, we cannot let our guard down at any time. Yuki Qiansha remained expressionless without any expression and continued, "Oh, did you miss the siege of the city when I practiced with the master craftsman?" Xiangzi Xiu quickly nodded and agreed, It was really a fierce battle." "Well, that's really a pity." Yuki Qiansha let go of her shoulders and smiled, "I'm sorry, I didn't expect anyone to not understand Lord Kawakami. She's my idol." The atmosphere suddenly eased, and Shozawa Shio breathed a sigh of relief and replied, "Understanding, understanding. It's strange to understand. Just don't know your idol, why do you have to interrogate like a prisoner being tried? So, I hate fans the most. You have no idea which sentence can touch their sensitive points. However, you should know how old Mr. Chuanqing is now, right? This is something that has only recently happened. Even Kyoto has sent birthday congratulations." Seizing the gap between Xiangzi Xiu's relaxation, Yuki Qiansha sent out a pursuit. Xiangzi's facial contouring is awkward done. Recently, Xia Muyao never mentioned anything, and he only cares about the situation of the 5 female leads, but I don't know how old Mr. Chuanqing is," Xia Muyao interjected with a smile. "And why does my boyfriend care about other women? Does Qiansha hope your boyfriend does the same?" Yuki Qiansha looked at her face, which could not be called a smile, and quickly explained, "No, it's not." Xia Muyao reluctantly said, "So what exactly do you mean?" Yuki Qiansha lowered her head and said, "I'm sorry. Oh no, I'm a bit overconfident." As they were about to argue, Xiao Xiangzi patted the table and shouted, "No, I know how old she is." Xia Muyao cast a reproachful gaze, and Yuki Qiansha also looked up curiously. Xiangzi Xiao gave the answer. The Imperial Saber Envoy is not an ordinary person. Just by looking at her appearance, she cannot tell her age. Therefore, she will always be 18 years old. The two of them fell silent for a moment, teasing each other about Xiangzi Xiao. Good soil. How could it be smaller than us? Isn't that right? Wrong, only Chuanqing can celebrate his 28th birthday. A 30-year-old woman. What's wrong with 30? During lunch with 2 beautiful girls, Akira Sagazawa resolved a question from Yuki Chisha. Okada Hirata returned to his residence disheveled and smashed the furniture inside, venting his anger. "Damn it! Damn it! Damn it! You dare to flatter other men!" The vase hit the floor with a piercing sound of cracking, and a mature and gorgeous maid stood by the window, smiling as Okada Hirata smashed furniture. After the room was completely unrecognizable, Hirota Okada felt comfortable all over. He looked at the maid and hooked his hand. The maid walked up to him in high heels, picked up her skirt and saluted, "I heard Xia Muyao has a boyfriend, it seems to be true." "Her boyfriend has only one, and that's me." Okada Hirota's face was grim as she turned her head to look at the phoenix butterfly-style headdress on the maid's head and said, "Do you understand what I mean?" "Of course, the cult loves every believer." "What is the cost?" "It's simple, your fate." End of this chapter. Chapter 8. Do you want to leave me behind? You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 8. Do you want to leave me behind? After finishing lunch and bidding farewell to Yuki Chisha, Akira Xiangzi returned to the workshop to continue crafting his own spiritual sword. Listen to her, Kawakami Saya, the woman who almost caused him to crash, specifically wants to see him. And all of this is because Akira repaired the female spider, making Kawakami Saya believe he is a master-level craftsman. Such talents cannot be buried in the countryside, they must be brought back to Tokyo. However, according to Shemu Yaokapu, Chuanqing Saya was a trusted confidant promoted by Utsunami Lianhua. If she were to introduce herself to Utsunami Lianhua, then everything would be over. Thinking of this, Xiangzi Xiu put down the hammer in his hand and suddenly realized that he had nothing to love. After finally escaping Tokyo, she was still targeted by her eagle dog. The sky is going to kill me. If Xiangzi Xiu knew that the spider girl was Chuanqing Saya's proud spiritual sword, he wouldn't even touch it. But fortunately, Kawakami Saya has received a temporary task and doesn't know when he will be back yet. Xiangzi Xiu still has time to prepare for his escape. Escape. We must escape. Among the 5 female protagonists, Utsunami Lianhua is not the one with the worst personality, but she is not far away. Xiangzi Xiu could imagine himself as a traitor, with a dog leash around his neck and limbs propped up on the ground. Utsunami Lianhua sat on his back, holding a whip and crossing his legs. That kind of thing is not allowed. Just thinking about it made Akira shiver all over. He shook his head and decided to finish this spiritual sword before leaving Unohara and heading towards Kyoto. There is a symbiotic relationship between humans and gods over there, with complex forces that are very suitable for fishing in troubled waters. Xiangzi Xiu came to the fireplace, picked out the shining white disc being forged, and began to observe. This item is called a knife embryo, which is a semi-finished product. As long as it is polished by a knife craftsman, it can become a spiritual knife. However, after the formation of the blade embryo, the level of the spirit sword is fixed, and even if the craftsman performs exceptionally well, it is only one level higher. This blade embryo has a grade of D, and the integrated demon core is Iron Mouse, which was commissioned by an external master craftsman to forge. It's only D. level, it's too low. Although the Imperial swordsman usually does not use spiritual sword armor that exceeds their own qualifications. After all, combat effectiveness is just a paper number, and in actual combat, it mainly depends on one's own skills. Moreover, if the range cannot keep up, no matter how high the level of the spirit knife is, it is useless. However, Xiangzi Xiu felt that he could be a bit greedy because he could quickly upgrade by devouring demons. Of course, A. level and above will not be considered for now, as materials are also a big issue. No matter how powerful Xiangzi Xiu is, he cannot rely on a group of inferior materials to make advanced spiritual knives. With this thought in mind, he stuffed the blade back into the furnace and picked up a smaller black iron block inside. This item is called soul steel and is the foundation for forging blade blanks. Unlike the jade steel used in ordinary Tai Dao, the soul steel of Ling Dao is a metal material mixed with the core of demons and gods, and the so-called core refers to one spirit and 4 souls. By allocating the proportion of the 4 souls reasonably, a sword forging master can create spirit sword armor that specializes in attacking different categories. In other words, it is the attribute entry in the game. The knife used for escaping life naturally needs to pay attention to concealment and speed. In terms of insufficient combat power, top-notch whiteboard spirit swords such as Night Blade God can be used to make up for it. It's just that the consumption is a bit high. As for the recasting of the Night Blade God, Xiangzi Xiu has no plans at the moment. After all, the Kikuchi script is a famous sword and cannot be casually discarded. 5 days later, the Spirit Blade Armor Workshop. He stood by the stove, took out the forged blade, put it in cold water, and waited for it to cool down. The standard spirit knife can achieve this level, it's almost there. Xiangzi Xiu's heart moved and he identified the blade embryo. Xiangzhou Zhuan authentic, quality. B. Skill. None, effect. Quiet and fast, style God. None, the forging knife genre is divided into 5 major traditions, and Xiangzhou tradition is one of them, originating from Kamakura. The forging craftsmanship of the Xiangzi Xiu family is inherited from a knife craftsman named Authentic. Zhengzong is a great master of forging swords that has been passed down from Xiangzhou and has created many precious swords that have become famous among other countries. He and his successors are also known as the 10 authentic philosophers by the world, each of whom ranks among the masters. Therefore, this spiritual knife does not need to be tested, and simply being labeled as authentic is a guarantee of excellent quality. The rest just needs to be injected into the demon core, and the blade embryo will be completed. Xiu Xiangzi put away the blade and thought about how to take the next step. The forging knife workshop has a demonic core, but it is a public asset, and as a newcomer like Xiu Xiangzi, he has no right to use it. Moreover, the warehouse is full of E.grade and D.grade ordinary goods, which do not match his authentic B.grade Xiangzhou. So, Xiu Xiangzi wanted to hunt demons on his own. Don't worry about the time, because during these 5 days, Kawakami Saya has not returned, and as for the possibility of retaliating against him, Hirota Okada has remained peaceful. Xiangzi Xiu thinks he can be more prepared. And I'm also a bit hungry. The last time we preyed on demons was when we entered Yanohara. Although Xiangzi Xiu deliberately reserved some demons in advance, they have already been consumed almost for over half a month. I'm on vacation tomorrow, so take this time to go outside and take a look. Xiangzi Xiu said he would do it, so he left the room and took a 3-day leave with the master craftsman to prepare for his first hunting trip across the country. That night, Xiao Xiangzi stuffed the simple forging knife equipment into the system space bar and secretly slipped out of Yunohara according to the route observed beforehand. After capturing suitable demons, he plans to forge a spirit sword on the spot in the wilderness to prevent accidents. However, after crossing 3 layers of defense posts, Xiangzi Xiu was stopped by a person. "Oh, didn't you agree to take me with you? Are you leaving me behind?" Outside Yunohara Castle, Xia Muyao, dressed in a black imperial saber uniform, stood in front of Sagazawa's face. She held a spiritual knife in her hand, tilted her head, her blood-red pupils sparkling, cold and alluring. Looking at her appearance, Xiangzi Xiu felt inexplicably anxious and said, "Didn't you go to Gaowei Mountain to investigate?" "Investigation mission, they don't even know if they come back early." Xia Muyao took a step closer and continued to ask, "Where are you going?" Xiangzi Xiu stabilized his mind and took out his sword embryo, explaining, "I'm almost done, but I'm missing the demon core. I'm going outside to try my luck, but I don't want to run away alone." Xia Muyao glanced at Dao Embry and confirmed that Xiangzi Xiu had not deceived her, then smiled and said, "That's good. I thought you were afraid of seeing Chuanqing Saya, so you wanted to slip away alone. Although I have thought about it, since I have said I want to protect you, I will not break my promise." "Sure enough, you still want to escape." Xia Muyao threw away his spiritual sword and crouched on the ground, scratching his snow-white long hair with both hands, unable to see his expression clearly. After a while, she lifted her head and said to Xiangzi Xiu in a cheerful tone, "It's all Yuki Chisha's fault. Why don't we kill her?" Why did the topic turn to killing Teak Chiffon? Although Xiangzi Xiu felt that it was a bit annoying for her to inquire about her information every day. "But she's your good friend, do you have to take action?" Yumu Qiansha thought she was hiding well, but in fact, I had already discovered that she was a spy for Aunt Sweji. Xia Muyao took Xiangzi Xiu's hand and begged, "Just think it's for me. Kill her, okay?" End of this chapter. Chapter 9. Kill the Rooster as a warning to the monkey. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 9. Kill the Rooster as a warning to the monkey. Xiu Xiangzi doesn't want to kill anyone. He believes that killing does not solve the current problem. He held on to Xia Muyao's palm and stared at her seriously, asking, "Although you didn't say it, I still want to ask, why did Sasuke Hanyu pursue you?" Since crossing over, this question has been hidden in Xiangzi Xiu's heart. He was very strange. Sasuke Hanyu was a proud and stubborn person who even said he didn't care about the accidental death of his adopted cat, but secretly wiped away tears. How could he possibly kill his raised niece? "Xia Muyao, what mistake did you make?" "Perhaps it was because I caused my adoptive father to go missing." Xia Muyao was stunned for a moment, and a bitter smile curved his lips. "When I was a child, I fell ill. My adoptive father, in order to help me treat my illness, repeatedly went deep into dangerous areas. Aunt Sweji advised him several times, but he never returned after his last visit to Inchi Island. Therefore, my aunt believes that I am an unknown person." "What disease?" "Tinnitus. However, compared to regular tinnitus, I can hear sounds that do not belong to humans. They have been wailing, crying, roaring, and laughing in my ears all along. At that time, I was tormented to the point of mental numbness and wanted to die several times." Xiangzi Xiu had tinnitus for a period of time, and that feeling was really worse than death, even though he was lucky enough to be cured, or rather accustomed to it. But he can still empathize with how young Xia Muyao feels. And, he can be certain that the voice that doesn't belong to humans is the damn Black Mist God. Otherwise, Junyu Hanyu wouldn't have gone to Hidden Chi Island alone, that SSS-level secret realm adventure. No wonder Xia Muyao sometimes acts so extreme and solitary. Xiangzi Xiu reached out to stroke her smooth long hair and gently asked, "Now, has the tinnitus been cured?" "It's okay, I've been used to it for so many years." Xia Muyao lowered his head and leaned against Xiangzi Xiu's body, enjoying caressing like a obedient and gentle white cat. What she didn't say was that the voice in her ears was gradually decreasing, and as soon as she approached Xiang's Xiu, it would immediately disappear. That is to say, as long as you stay by his side, the disease will automatically heal. Xiang's Xiu is her antidote. After a moment, Xiang's Xiu withdrew his hand and said to Xiaomuyao, "Don't worry, I will resolve your misunderstanding with Yusheng Saki and help you treat your tinnitus." Xiaomuyao asked, "She is now a close friend of the Utsunomiya Daemon god. Your presence will be exposed." "There's no need to worry about this," Akira Sagawa guessed with mixed feelings. "Since Yukimi Qiansha is a spy planted next to you, Yuzuki Hanyu should have already discovered me. After all, there are many loopholes in the matter of forging the sword for Kawabata Qingsha. But after all that time, there hasn't been anyone from Tokyo, which means she doesn't want to claim my existence yet. Or rather, she wants to shield me in the game, while not preparing to please the female lead. Akira spends all the extra free action points on the female supporting character. Yuzuki Hanyu, the second younger sister, naturally became one of his targets. There's no way, who can refuse a female ghost who calls themselves miscellaneous fish, but now it seems that his efforts have not been in vain. Yuzuki Hanyu, who was full of affection, knew that Utsunami Alienhua was hostile towards him, but still chose to help cover it up. That means that favorability is really working. So, Xiang's Xiu is not prepared to do anything to Yuki Chisha. Just in case, she is contacting Yuzuki Sasuke's microphone. But from the opposite perspective, hatred is also a real existence. This means that if he is accidentally exposed, he will really be taken in by Utsunami Alienhua as a dog. After listening to the explanation, Xiaomuyao nodded and smiled behind his hands, saying, "Then I will become a stumbling block for you and Answeji. Will Shoujuan hand me over?" Xiang's Xiu shook his head and said, I will make her give up chasing you." In fact, Xiaomuyao's argument did not completely convince him. Because she couldn't explain why she had to leisurely participate in the college assessment after being chased by one of the three most powerful imperial families of the United Front. There must be other reasons that were not mentioned. "It's really reliable, hero." Xiaomuyao lowered his head and kicked the small stone beside him. "So what are you going to do next?" "You're going to Black Mist with me." "Well, together." After leaving Unohara and leaving the daily patrol area of the Imperial Saber Envoy, the black mist in the air became increasingly thick. After stepping into the dense forest, there were inexplicably several odors of non-human creatures around. Feeling the cold and greedy gaze, Akira placed his hand on the handle of the knife, ready to draw it at any time. "Shoujuan, where are we going?" "There shouldn't be any good demon hunting grounds nearby," Xiaomuyao asked. Human settlements are usually located on the outskirts of Black Mist, without powerful demons. So, to cast a blade embryo and obtain a good core, one usually moves towards the depths of the Black Mist. But deep down there is danger and the situation is complex. Even an ordinary team needs at least 3 people. Not to mention, at present, her and Xiang's Xiu's Imperial Saber Envoy's qualification level is not high, which is indeed a bit risky. But for some reason, Xiaomuyao was not afraid at all, but rather enjoyed the night atmosphere of the two walking together. "At first, I planned to go to Gaowei Mountain, but because you were there for assessment, I decided to change direction and head west to Jiafei to try my luck." Gaowei Shan de Tian Go. "Well, but A-level monsters are not very easy to catch, so I targeted the crow dog, which can eat and fight, with first-class speed. Fortunately, you didn't go. The monks there worship the great heavenly dog as their guardian deity, and if you go, you will be kicked out." Just a group of monks, thinking back then. As the night grew darker and the moon rose to its highest point, Xiang's Xiu and Xiaomuyao chatted and walked towards the depths of the dense forest. By relying on a map with a 100% exploration rate, one can confuse the dead end of ordinary imperial swordsmen and not deceive Xiang's Xiu at all. As he passed a fork in the road, he stopped, raised his fingers, and made a silent gesture to Xiaomuyao. Because in his field of vision, a black shadow suddenly passed by. Although it flashed by, the recognition system still managed to capture its true form. Monkey Ghost, Grade E. The ape ghost, also known as the dead monkey, becomes a monster after being contaminated with black mist. Although the combat effectiveness is not high, it retains the habits of life. Seeing one indicates that there is a pile of ambushes in the dark, which is quite troublesome. Xiangzi Xiu pulled out the Night Blade God and said to Xiaomuyao, "They are ape ghosts, which can be used to deter other monsters." Xiaomuyao nodded and pulled out the spiritual sword, which was a standard spiritual sword from the academy called Guanhu, with a grade of D. "What do I want to do?" "Follow me and protect yourself." In order to reduce consumption, Xiu Xiangzi put on the Night Blade God in a concrete form, which appeared a bit short compared to the ape ghost that was as high as 4 or 5 meters. Several ape ghosts saw this and swung down from the tree, emitting piercing laughter. They wielded spears they had picked up from somewhere and waved them recklessly, as if mocking Shozawa Hideyoshi as a minor. But it's just killing monsters, and body size is not the main influencing factor. Xiangzi Xiu exerted his strength with a push, and the Night Blade God rushed forward. The shimmering chrysanthemum text cut through the sky, and the heads of several ape ghosts fell to the ground in an instant. Because of their fast speed, their bodies collapsed and still twitched instinctively. Without stopping, Xiangzi Xiu continued to chop towards the dense group of apes and ghosts in his field of vision. He knows that apes and ghosts are the most cunning, and they will run when the situation is bad. If they are not eliminated at once, the following sections will be harassed. 5 minutes later, the forest regained calmness, and Xiangzi Xiu stood on piles of ape and ghost corpses, looking around. After discovering that there were no extra marks in his field of vision, he lifted his spiritual sword armor. "Xiujuan, how impressive." Xiaomuyao cast an admiring gaze, thoughtfully offered water, and took out a towel to carefully wipe his sweat. "A mere ape ghost, not worth mentioning." Xiangzi Xiu could feel that with the clean and sharp hunting just now, the gaze around him instantly decreased by more than half. After a brief rest, the two continued on their journey. However, not long after, at a fork in the road, Xiangzi Xiu stopped his steps. "Kill the chicken as a warning to the monkey, but kill the monkey as a warning to no one." He glanced at the teak thousand gauze tied to the ground with widened eyes, drew out the Night Blade God, and said to the unidentified person blocking the intersection with a hood on his head. "The phoenix and butterfly pattern. Haven't the members of the cult died yet?" End of this chapter. Chapter 10. I Hate You the Most. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 10. I hate you the most. After the arrival of black mist, society collapsed, and comforting religions emerged like mushrooms after rain. The Eternal Church is one of the best, and they believe in the eternal God named Eternal Worm. The so-called eternal world refers to an ideal homeland similar to the pure land of bliss, and the eternal worm is the deity from the pure land. In the game, members of the Eternal Church who promote their faith can achieve wealth and longevity, stimulate their potential, and obtain the qualification of being a sword-wielding envoy. After death, they can also go to the afterlife and enjoy the ultimate joy. So some people, in order to break free from their commoner status and gain extraordinary power, are willing to join the cult and personally serve and feed the eternal worms. And according to the instructions, after the Changsha insect becomes a pupa, swallow it in one gulp, do not eat or drink, and wither until the Changsha insect transforms into a butterfly. However, this is a complete scam. Qualified individuals will be sucked and controlled by insects, becoming mindless puppets and enslaved by senior members of the cult. People without qualifications will only die for nothing and become food for eternal insects, unable to even rest their souls. At that time, Xiangzi Xiu was still part of the United Front and was ordered by the Utsunomiya Daemon God to investigate the illegal activities of false gods, so he set his sights on the eternal sect. He spent 3 major chapters traveling across the entire 15 countries of the East China Sea, witnessing countless tragedies of family destruction and death. Finally, he defeated the damn eternal god and sent it back to the other side of the black mist. But now, only 30 years have passed, and the eternal god has made a comeback. At the fork in the road, the leading man in a dark gray religious robe unexpectedly recognized their origin at a glance, and asked with great interest. "You are so young that you even know about the cult. Have your parents and elders ever joined?" "No, it's a cult." "Why join?" The leading man frowned and was about to scold Xiangzi Xiu loudly, but when he thought of the scene where the other party had easily defeated the group of apes and ghosts just now, he could only snort coldly. Another foolish person, constantly experiencing a miracle, has returned. Xiangzi Xiu impatiently interrupted him, "Stop talking nonsense and hit whenever you want." He doesn't think a group of cultists, deep in the black mist, came to ask him for directions. The leading man let out a deep laugh and said, "The cult loves peace. If you're willing to join, I'll let you go and tell you who wants your life. Besides Hirota Okada, who else can there be? If Utsunami Aoyenhua wants to catch him, it must be the United Front's full S.level deployment. How could a group of D.level miscellaneous fish be sent over? For the current Sagazawa Shio, the use of A.level or above imperial swords can make him feel a slight threat. But how could such a big shot possibly take action due to the jealousy of students? So, Hirota Okada's threat was not taken seriously from the beginning. As soon as Xiangzi Shugang took a step forward, the leading man quickly shouted, "Don't come over." He felt that despite having a large number of people on his own side and only one person on the other side, he felt that he was surrounded in terms of aura. The man kicked the buttocks of Teakwood Qiansha with his foot and said in a deep voice, "Don't you want her life?" Xiangzi Xiu glanced at her and found that the members of the sect had good rope skills, showcasing the delicate and concave figure of the teak tree with 1,000 threads. Especially with her constantly flickering eyes, there was a hint of being coerced. "How did you catch her?" he asked. "This is our territory, she's all focused on following you and doesn't even know she's falling into a trap," the leading man persuaded. "How about it? She's a beauty. As long as you join the sect, there are still many women like her." Xiangzi Xiu shook his head and said, "Ordinary goods are not as good as my home." Leading man. Yuki Chisha. Xia Muyao said, "That's great." The leading man glared angrily at Xia Muyao because of her, putting himself in danger. "You are good friends, aren't you? Do you want to face death and not save yourself?" Xia Muyao spread out his hand and said, "There's nothing we can do. Being an imperial swordsman is already a highly dangerous job, and it's not a big deal to die alone." The leading man couldn't bear it anymore. He grabbed the spiritual sword and prepared to use the eternal power bestowed upon him by the priest. Even if Xiangzi Xiu's strength exceeded expectations, he could counterattack. He turned his head to the servant behind him and ordered, "Kill him, the Eternal God Society." However, Xiangzi Xiu did not give him a chance to fight. In the moment he turned his head, Xiangzi Xiu immediately stepped forward, cutting off the leading man's right hand holding the spiritual sword with a knife, and kicking the Teak Qiansha to Xia Muyao behind him with a foot. And neatly remove their heads before other believers react. There is no need for kindness towards cultists. Xiangzi Xiu stood tall and stepped on the man's back, placing his spiritual sword on his neck. He said coldly, "Hold back and don't scream. I'll ask you an answer." However, even extraordinary individuals cannot resist the pain of breaking their hands. The man stared blankly at his detached right hand, his mouth wide but unable to speak. Hot sweat instantly seeped out of his forehead, and he felt his eyeballs about to jump out of his eyes. After realizing that he had broken his hand, he was like a dry dead fish, constantly wriggling and rolling on the ground, shouting loudly, "It hurts. It hurts so much." On the other side. Xia Muyao crouched down and asked the teak tree Qiansha, who was wrapped in turtle shells all over her body, "Oh, why is Qiansha here? The reconnaissance mission of Gaowei Mountain should not be over yet, right?" Yumu Qiansha lowered her head and remained silent, her heart as if it were ashes. She knew that when she was caught by the members of the cult and tied up as a chip, everything was over. "Why aren't you talking? Isn't Qiansha saying that we need to communicate more during normal times?" Xia Muyao blinked her big red eyes and asked, "I've already taken off the rag from your mouth." "Enough, that's enough," said Teak Chi Sha in a soft voice, "Speak up, I can't hear you." "I said, that's enough." Yuki Chi Sha lifted her head and shouted loudly, "I am the spy that Yuzuru Sasuke has planted next to you. I keep an eye on you, report on your situation, and if necessary, kill you. You're satisfied?" Her shout was extremely sharp, even covering the man who had broken his hand and howling, leaving the latter stunned. "Sure enough, you're my aunt's spy," Xia Muyao said with a faint smile at the corner of his mouth. "Actually, I already knew. After all, there's no such coincidence. We were born in the same village. It's not a coincidence. Is there still a need for disguise now? I told you, it's not a coincidence." Yuki Qiansha suddenly looked up and stared at Xia Muyao intently. "You and I are from the same village, that's why I hate you. You are an orphan and a lowly person, and I am also an orphan and a lowly person. Why can you be adopted by the Yusheng family and enjoy yourself in the sunshine, while I have to undergo death training and live a miserable life in the darkness? Because your hair is white, do you look good? But I'm not bad either." Xia Muyao asked her expressionlessly, "Do you think being adopted by the Yusheng family is very lucky?" Yuki Qiansha twisted her head and sneered, but did not answer. Not long after, the man's howls had stopped. Tired to the point where she was about to fall asleep, she heard the sound of the spiritual sword unsheathed and silently closed her eyes, waiting for her final moment. When she received spy training, she knew that one day she would come. "However, I didn't expect that it was my long-time friend who killed me." Pwai, the spirit knife cut through the long rope, and Teak Chi Sha felt her whole body loosen, freeing herself from the rope. She lifted her head, opened her eyes, and found that Xiangzi Xiu was holding onto the dripping spiritual sword, looking down at herself. End of this chapter.